To begin with, I want you to listen to this cry from the soul of anti-Semites and anti-capitalists. That's when, gentlemen, the world changes. When there is Trump, Netanyahu, and common sense that has begun to replace fanaticism. Listen, this will really please you.
Chinese Chairman Xi Jinping was absent from this year's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa summit in Brazil. Beijing officially cited a scheduling conflict as the reason. The meeting with the president of Brazil took place earlier this year. This two-day summit in Rio de Janeiro has brought together diplomats from Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, Egypt, Iran, and other nations. Vladimir Putin delivered a speech via video link. Both Russia and China are keeping their distance from Iran after, of course, the recent conflict with the United States and Israeli forces.
I think he just said Saudi Arabia. He said, "We no longer want to interfere in other people's affairs that have nothing to do with us and hinder the development and security of our motherland, our state."
The landers arrived at the summit. But other leaders at the summit spoke out and condemned the attacks on Iran, as well as opposed the tariffs. President Trump seemed to respond in a tough manner. Any country that joins the anti-American Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa policy will be subject to an additional 10% tariff. No exceptions to this rule, period. Let's invite the senior fellow of the Gatestone Institute, Gordon Chang. Gordon, you say that you suspect there's something deeper behind his absence. And I want to add that Maria reported that her sources told her that Xi Jinping suffered a stroke at some point. Tell us more.
Yeah, Maria was the first person in the American media who actually talked about this. And I think there are only two plausible explanations for why Xi Jinping missed the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa summit. One of them is that because of political unrest in the country, he couldn't afford to leave. And the second is that his political opponents are now so strong that they didn't allow him to leave the country. You know, we don't know because the Chinese political system is not transparent.
That's right. This isn't just news. It's a historic tectonic shift.
On June 24, 2025, the Chief of the General Staff of Israel, Lieutenant General Yalzamir, made the following statement. Ground teams operated deep inside Iranian territory and provided us with freedom of action. This statement was not news, but only confirmed what many who had been following the operation already knew from leaks, videos, and eyewitness accounts. Mossad agents infiltrated Iran even before the start of Operation Rising Lion on June 13th.
The Israelis of Massa mostly entered Iran long before the start of Israel's operation. There were many allies in Iran, including those who still remembered life under the so-called tyranny of the Shah, and the youth of Iran who wanted to live with European and American freedom began to organize into resistance groups. If Iran didn't yet resemble a powder keg, the fuse was already smoldering. And it had been smoldering for quite a long time, ever since what Iranians call Obama's betrayal, and then the betrayal of the Biden administration.
We had complete control over Iranian airspace and every point where we decided to act, said Zamir. This became possible in part thanks to the cooperation and disinformation carried out by the air and ground teams of Stochka. Thus, for the first time, Israel acknowledged conducting an operation on Iranian territory. Public evidence of this activity began to emerge as early as June 13, when news and Western media described an operation in which Mossad and elite Israel Defense Forces units had been quietly establishing a deadly presence inside Iran for several months. They secretly smuggled quadcopters, precision munitions, communication devices, and operatives into the country, hiding all of it in civilian cars, suitcases, cargo containers, and also disguising it as electronics or household goods. By early June, the teams and equipment were already in position outside Tehran, Isfahanabad, and other important sites.
right under their noses. Iranian intelligence and the Revolutionary Guard Corps were not only gathering intelligence, but also planning comprehensive sabotage and unexpected pinpoint operations. And all of this was actually happening deep behind enemy lines.
So on June 13th, around 3:30 a.m., while dozens of Israeli fighter jets were taking off to carry out an airstrike, Mossad operatives were already on the ground, launching drones and missiles from Pik-E in Laos, mounted on vehicles. At air defense and radar targets, elite teams that had infiltrated deep into Iran were dismantling their air defense system from the inside. At this moment, the operation shifted from covert planning to open action. The ground team seamlessly integrated into the air campaign that was about to erupt above their heads.
Iran didn't stand a chance. The bombers were still on their way, but Iran's air defense radars and weapons depots started exploding, and the commanders responsible for taking action began dying one by one. The Israelis blocked the Iranian military's communications, jammed the radar signals. They even intercepted communications between Iran's military leadership. But what's even more interesting is that the Israelis accessed Iran's phone networks and took control of them.
Israeli operatives got into Iranian telephone systems. Israeli operatives penetrated Iranian telephone systems. And secret calls in the Kurdish language were made by a high-ranking official and an IRGC general, giving them 12 hours to evacuate or die. The leaked audio recording that was published confirmed these reports. When the Iranian air defense system and communications were destroyed, and the military was in confusion, about 200 planes that took off from Israel began to arrive and strike more than 100 targets. Among them were nuclear facilities in Natanz and Fordow, missile depots near Kermanshah, and important IRGC command posts in Tehran. The drones that carried out the initial strikes succeeded in providing the Israeli Air Force with full air superiority to conduct the attacks. Under the guidance of Mossad ground units and the aircraft Glow L/W 2085 Nakshon Natram, which were flying over the area by dawn, F-35, Ardir, F-16 Sufa, and F-15 Raim fighters completed the operation, dropping precision-guided munitions on nuclear and military facilities across Iran. They were supported by aerial refuelers, including secret Boeing 707S-7RM and the new KC-46 Pixars. And so suddenly, after decades of threats and bravado, Ran found himself forced to simply watch as the Israeli strike group flew away, illuminated by the rising sun. When the strike started, the teams vanished into the surroundings. Though unconfirmed, elite units like Sayeret, Matkal, and Shayatet 13 likely took part in the operation. These groups are known for deep infiltration, sabotage, speed, and the ability to quickly leave the operation area, so it makes perfect sense that they were involved. The secret drone base was shut down, the equipment was hidden or destroyed, and the vehicles blended into the flow of civilian traffic. At least for a while, until dawn. The results were staggering. Iranian radars and nuclear infrastructure suffered catastrophic damage. Precision munitions and drones destroyed the regime's strategic depth in a matter of hours. The Fordow uranium enrichment facility, which had long been considered impregnable due to its mountain shelter, was hit at key tunnel entrances. Satellite images showed collapsed entrances and traces of secondary explosions deep inside.
That is, the Israeli Air Force knew the geography of Iran's nuclear laboratories so precisely that they were able to seal off and block the entrances and exits of the underground facilities and storage sites, preventing the Iranians from removing anything from there. Before the arrival of the American B-2S with bunker-busting bombs. At the same time, all known centrifuges were destroyed, as well as all power sources needed for their operation. In addition to the power sources, those who could have organized resistance or evacuated the equipment were also eliminated.
Major General Mohammad Bagheri, Iran's chief of staff and a key figure in war planning, was confirmed killed at the very beginning of the attack. General Hossein Salami, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, died during a relocation attempt. Amir Ali Hajizadeh, the head of Iran's aerospace forces and the architect of the country's missile doctrine, was also among the dead. The head of Khatam al-Anbiya, Iran's strategic military coordination center, was killed as a result of a strike on the defense headquarters in Tehran in one of the most striking incidents. Major General Gholam Ali Rashid, the commander of the central staff of Khatam al-Anbiya, was killed in the early hours of Operation Rising Lion on June 13th when Israeli fighter jets struck his command center in Tehran. Just 4 days later, his successor, Major General Ali Shadmani, who was appointed to replace Rashid as Iran's wartime military commander, was also killed in a precision airstrike on June 17th. I think there were quite a few Iranian officers who prayed to Allah not to get promoted. The leadership of the nuclear program was also decapitated when Ghalamreza Maghrabi, the head of operations at the Fordo facility, was killed in the first wave. Just days later, his successor and several prominent scientists were also killed. They were targeted by precision drone strikes and explosions.
The smallest aspects of the operation were carefully planned, including possible Iranian responses and reactions to any enemy actions. How did Iran respond? As expected, with chaotic strikes on residential areas of Israel.
But unlike the surgical Israeli operation, which targeted radar stations, nuclear facilities, and high-ranking military officials, Iran's response was chaotic. The wild barrages triggered air raid sirens across Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Beersheba as the Iron Dome and David's Sling systems shot down drones and missiles in the sky. The Israeli air defense system boasts intercepting more than 90% of targets, but some missiles still got through. The most devastating strike hit the Sorak Medical Center in Beersheba, where dozens of people were injured. In Tel Aviv, a missile exploded near the Kiryat, the headquarters
of the Israeli army.
The explosion shook the ground beneath the National Command Post, but did not penetrate the defenses. Iranian drones and missiles also struck the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot and the Pugaviem Technopark in
Beersheba.
In the north, a drone struck a 2-story residential building, a rare instance of the Israel Defense Forces confirming a direct hit.
Of a drone.
In Ramat Gan, Holon, and Tamra, residential neighborhoods were affected, windows were shattered, and there are minor injuries. Perhaps the most alarming was the strike near Haifa, where part of the Bazan oil refinery and the local power station were damaged, causing fires and power outages. Although most threats were intercepted, these few successful hits show how a saturation strategy can jeopardize even the world's second most advanced missile defense system.
That is, Tehran had no plan for a response. For 30 years, every day the mullahs shouted, "Death to Israel." The people shouted with them. They blessed bombs and rockets, promised 70 virgins, but completely forgot to think about what they would do if Israel, that scoundrel, attacked first. That is, preemptively after first smashing Iran's mercenaries. Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis. The Assyrians themselves will tell Iran to go to hell, or maybe even further. The Iranians were shocked by how many Israelis were preparing bombings of Iran while being inside their country.
The security forces, under the leadership of the Ministry of Intelligence and the IRGC, began detaining suspects across the country. Over 700 people were arrested in the first wave, including border guards, customs officers, defense ministry technicians, civilian contractors, and junior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps personnel. In Tehran and Qom, especially large-scale raids took place, as Basij militia fighters detained dozens of people in the early morning hours of the capital. Whole apartment complexes were sealed off for questioning. In less than a week, the authorities announced that they had identified several accomplices connected to Zionist intelligence and began expedited hearings in closed revolutionary courts. At least 3 executions were confirmed. Confessions, apparently made under pressure, were broadcast on the state television of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Not a single Israeli, nor any of those who actively helped Israel from within, remained in Iran after the end of the operation. No one was left behind. Innocent people were arrested and forced to confess. Well, that's always the case in ideological states. Let's call it that. What is Iran hoping for, or rather, who is it hoping for? China and Russia. Now let's talk about China, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, there will be something very, 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 very interesting at the end. Xi Jinping did not go to the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa summit. This is an extraordinary event, just so you understand. Either he is on his deathbed, meaning he's in such bad shape that he can't leave, or his rule is threatened by some kind of danger. Remember, Khrushchev left the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and when he came back, he was no longer the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Putin didn't go either. After learning Xi wouldn't attend, he chose not to go as well. So, the two main Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa participants suddenly didn't go to the meeting, but the world focused on the reasons for Xi not going. Maria Bartolomeo has good sources in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and from her point of view, it's about Xi's illness. China's policy towards the United States has led to bankruptcies, lockouts, banking problems, and the suspension of construction projects. And the Chinese personalized their problems with the image of Xi Jinping. So right now he's fighting for his survival. But here is all the data coming out of China. There's an internal struggle going on there right now. There are those who want peace and prosperity, willing to sacrifice national pride for the sake of flourishing, and those who would rather cause chaos than give up an inch. And the danger is that in such situations, usually reasonable Kite might start doing foolish things, sparking conflicts and armed clashes around the world. For example, they tried to provoke and start a conflict between India and Pakistan, but the conflict was stopped by Trump. That's why Pakistan is planning to nominate Trump for the Nobel Prize, by the way, the Nobel Peace Prize. Now Congo is also planning to do the same together with the African Union to nominate Trump for another Nobel Prize. Honestly, after Yasser Arafat and Barack Obama receiving the Nobel Peace Prize is not really proof of anything. I don't know if the recipient has actually done anything for peace. Rather, the Nobel is given for hatred of Jews and for causing the greatest possible harm to this nationality. I think Trump could get the Nobel, just so that they, so to speak, will try their best to smooth out the impression that all the recipients of the Peace Prize are anti-Semites, vile creatures, murderers, and bastards as well. And maybe Trump will refuse, but I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to be among the fierce haters of America's fundamental principles. Well, by the way, on July 7th in the White House, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu gave Trump a copy of Israel's letter to the Nobel Committee. This is already the third appeal regarding Trump to the Nobel Committee, in which Israel nominates Trump for a third Nobel Peace Prize. As you remember, the riots and chaos in Los Angeles ended when Trump deployed 500 Marines from their base in Orange County to downtown Los Angeles. Everything calmed down, disappeared, vanished, I would even say. Those who were running around there just decided not to mess with the Marines. The mayor and the governor gave condemning speeches, accusatory monologues, promising the local criminals, who in our city sell everything that criminals usually sell, that there would be more federal agents. We, the mayor and the governor of California, will not allow them to come here to interfere with your business. So no one will stop the cartels from selling drugs and trafficking underage girls and boys for the amusement of the district's sadomasochists and their wealthy guests from abroad. But they forgot to ask Ace about it.
We are with hundreds of federal agents and military personnel. Meanwhile, a large-scale federal immigration operation is underway in the MacArthur Park area of Los Angeles, which is considered a sanctuary city. This area is heavily influenced by the Mara Salvatrucha 13 gang.
Which means that this area is controlled by a gang called Mara Salvatrucha 13, one of the most violent gangs in the world. It was to them that the mayor of Los Angeles promised protection from Trump.
Mayor Bass has demanded that the raids stop, so this is another live broadcast.
This crazy woman has no authority. Keep watching, you'll see her in the crowd.
Here's the real view from KTTV. Hundreds of federal agents and military personnel are taking part in this large-scale operation to enforce immigration laws. You can actually see the large tanks right here, and you can see the agents in their gear. And it looks like Mayor Basnu is surrounded by photographers. So we're working on getting more information. It looks like she is going to work on getting information on this issue.
The mayor arrived there and on camera demanded that the police leave immediately and not touch the gangsters. She showed up at a fascinating time. I'll tell you now.
Mayor, are you here to take them away?
Mayor, are you here to remove them? Get them out.
It's on!
Yeah. One question, Mayor Mask. Can we talk to you really quickly? What are you doing to protect journalists? All the journalists have been shot, arrested, disappeared. I'm afraid to go outside and do my job. But what are you personally doing to protect journalists? What are you personally doing to protect journalists?
She's recording it on video.
Sorry, I apologize.
This is our mayor, Karen Bass, who, well, burned down a quarter of our city, Los Angeles. She appointed 3 of her lesbian friends as heads of the fire department, who probably were good at something, but it had nothing to do with fighting fires. Here she is, a beauty, a smart woman, a Komsomol member, but not an athlete.
Are you planning to leave? All right, please, can you leave as soon as possible?
What is the assignment?
Karen Bas Elgunya, Karen Bas Elgunya.
And from the crowd,
They shout Karenbus Algunya Lagunya.
He needs surgery, that's his name. No, Taran Basalgunya, Taran Basalgunya.
She knows about the 2028 Olympics, that's his name.
That's how wisely and efficiently she runs the city. She calls someone and says, "Can't you come any sooner? It's really important, as soon as possible." And now a tantrum. Mayor Bus, Mayor.
Bass, any comments? Mayor Bass, thank you.
Yes, my comment. They need to leave, and they need to leave right now. They need to leave because this is unacceptable. They're just waiting to leave.
We can't allow this.
They'll leave soon.
Can we ask her to talk to him?
She goes down there for absolutely no reason. They're telling her, "Hey, we're done already. Mission accomplished." And then she tells the media that they need to leave when they're already leaving. She tries to take credit, then she says, "Listen, this is..."
My comment. They need to leave right now. This is unacceptable.
Who were you talking to?
Mayor Bass, they're just waiting to leave.
Just wait and see. They'll leave soon. Look what I've done. Look what I've finished.
I mean, remember The Little Prince? When the dictator would go out onto the field exactly 1 minute before sunrise and order the sun to rise, and the sun would obediently rise? Similarly, the mayor of Los Angeles found out that the operation was over and loudly demanded on camera that they leave her city. And right away, on command, just like the dictator with the sun, everyone started leaving. We ended up with an all-powerful mayor in Los Angeles. So, gentlemen, here's a question. I need to transfer money to my employees in Russia and Belarus from time to time. I can't do this through cryptocurrency or cash or by paying people who do this as a business. And here I transfer to a bank account, and over there it can be done however they want, through the bank in cash, wire transfer, cash, or to a card. If anyone is interested, let me know in the comments. Besides that, we have a store with products featuring interesting inscriptions and slogans. Click on the slogans and check them out. The link will be under the video. We always have information about this there, and I think there are photos too. You can click on them or on the link and everything will open up. This might interest some people. And finally, my book, Capitalism 101, is not dry economics, but fun stories about how to learn to live better. There will be a link below. Click it and get the book as a gift. And in the United States, events happen every day that affect the whole world. When someone sneezes in Washington, people jump in Beijing, Kyiv, Jakarta, and Riyadh. And nowhere else will you get such complete, comprehensive, and interesting coverage and stories about what's happening as you will here on Leon Vainstein's channel. Subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Leave your comments. I read them. Sometimes I write thank you. Sometimes I reply. Sometimes I just leave a little note or a hook, but I do read them. And please share with your friends, because that's how the channel grows. Thank you for stopping by. I hope we'll meet again tomorrow, right? We'll meet. And the day after tomorrow again. Goodbye.